Hello and welcome to Express Sports Podcast. You're listening to Game Time with me, Mihir Vasavda. Vinayak Monarangan is with us, and very suspiciously, the man who's joining us has returned from Spain, and within days we have heard a piece of news that I guess many tennis fans would have been dreading. Although you could see it coming from quite a distance, I think from India as well. But Namit Kumar, welcome. And if many of you haven't guessed what we are talking about this week, it is Rafael Nadal's retirement. Finally, he's announced, and I don't say finally ki finally chalo at last उसने retirement announce कर डाला, but something that we all been discussing, talking about amongst ourselves कि कब होगा. Federer had gone and we could see Nadal struggle on court. Finally, when it happened on Thursday, a tinge of sadness, I guess even the hardcore Federer fans from the early noughts to mid noughts and last year, I guess, would have also felt that bit of disappointment. So here we are. We thought we'd be discussing Women's World Cup, but we are now with Rafael Nadal, talking about how he's made us feel as fans, as tennis fans, and the legacy that he leaves and how he's changed viewing tennis. Newer generation first. So Namit, how old were you when Nadal started playing?
I was maybe 5 or 6 when he won his first French Open. I don't know what it is, but whenever I'm on this show, my age is discussed. So I don't know what that says about how engaging our content is. So I have not really known tennis without Nadal. So, I mean, I've not known tennis without Federer either, but it says a lot that I was 5 or 6 when he won his first French Open, and now it is my job to talk and write about tennis and he's still around. I think that in itself is a big testament to how long he's been around and how he changed perceptions of people of how they watch tennis and who they root for.
Vinayak, for you, what's the Rafael Nadal memory?
No, thanks for not starting with my age. I appreciate that, especially with Namit around. So my Nadal story is a very different, kind of arc, so to speak. I still remember the 2008 Wimbledon final. I was in third year of college. I had invited a bunch of friends over to my home. We thought we'll have a big watch party for this Wimbledon final. We thought it'll be like a couple of hours, It's a couple of hours drive from our college to my home. So we thought we'll have a quick watch party, finish dinner, go back to college, but it turned out to be like a marathon that went on forever. We had to change the watch party into a sleepover. Yeah, and that day I spent the night crying in front of my friends because Nadal beat Federer, and I just couldn't take it. I mean, it was one of my worst memories as a sports fan early on, and that day I hated the guy. And from there to, growing to kind of love Nadal, the whole Fedal story arc itself is like that, right? I mean, Federer started off thinking, who's this punk who's coming here, trying to take me on, and they ended up as the best of friends. And I think the rivalry, even for the fans, sort of mirrors that. So yeah, end up loving what Nadal had to offer. What a great guy. I still remember that video that keeps going viral of Nadal's earlier points. I think was a Moya match, Carlos Moya match. The commentator says, this guy plays every point like it's last. Right, and he's going to end his career like that, playing every point like his last. Mihir, coming to you, the Paris experience of watching Nadal this year at the Olympics must have been quite something, and you now know that's even more special because it's his last season.
Yeah, Paris experience was actually quite different because everyone was on a nostalgia trip, right? So whatever he did was seen through this rose-tinted glasses and everything. And one thing, of course, was genuine was the affection that place has for Nadal. So if you remember, we had spoken to these people who have played a role in Nadal's life in the last 20 years. So one of the guys was this cake chef, a pastry chef, who, by the way, was also the pastry chef at the Ambani weddings, by the way. And he was saying, ki chota cheese, right? How he loves olives in his cake. So they used to hide olives in between, and he always was surprised and overjoyed when in a bite he spotted a couple of olives. So that was his sugar rush, so to say. Although he did say with a lot of regret that Rafa didn't really eat the cake apart from that one spoon that khush karne ke liye wo kha leta tha. But these little things. So there are so many people behind the scenes who, we talk about Nadal and clay court and Paris and everything. But there are so many people, even in Paris, who have made him feel at home over the last 20 years. And that affection was actually seen during the Olympics. And there was a lot of it. I mean, the number of people who turned up to watch him play, even the doubles with Carlos Alcaraz was too much. And, you just kind of imagine how it must feel. Olympics tennis, whatever said and done, isn't like a serious business, right? And if you then imagine what the atmosphere would be like during, say, a Roland Garros final, that just blows my mind off.
So, Namit, you had written yesterday about, so we obviously know about Nadal and French Open. We'll come back to that later a little bit. You've written about how he shouldn't just be restricted to French Open. Just tell us, I mean, his record outside France is obviously not as great as, a Djokovic or a Federer, but it's also because Djokovic and Federer existed. Otherwise, he might have won a few more. What made him the all-court great, as you wrote in your piece on the day?
So I think you only touched on this, that 2008 Wimbledon, right? And that is his biggest match ever. And his biggest match ever is not a clay court match. So that in itself speaks a lot about that Nadal was not just a mudlark, as they say. The thing about him was that initially his strengths were so obviously suited to clay, right? Because he had grown up on that surface and because he had very natural appetite from the baseline to stay on the baseline. But a lot of those strengths started coming into play on grass and hard also in that era. Because that era was dominated by these power baseliners. Federer was one of them, then Djokovic came. So it's actually far from it. Just that when you look at the clay numbers, it's like nothing in, I don't think in any sport that would have ever happened. The kind of domination he has of one event at the French Open. So which is why his legacy is obviously, they see it synonymous with clay and the French Open. But actually, it's not just about numbers also, right? If I think of like his best ever matches, I'd say very few of them are at the French Open. Can't even think of one right now because...
Actually, it's probably because no one could compete with him.
Exactly, right? So, and in tennis, it's not just about winning. It's when if the whole world does not watch tennis the whole time. They watch tennis during a Grand Slam final. And if a Grand Slam final goes to 5 sets and it goes into overtime, that is when... those are the ones that you remember and those are the ones that, have the most recall value. And at the French, there might be 1 or 2 like that for him. But it's actually his losses that are the most epic, especially the Australian Open. So I think that if I think of Nadal and his best matches and, the times where he's caused the biggest reaction, it's actually away from clay.
And one of those was, I think, the 2022 Australian Open final when he came back from 2 sets to down. Actually, for me, if I have to say, I've already spoken about the 2008 Federer match. The other 2 Nadal matches that I don't think I'll ever forget are both at the Australian Open, the 2022 final, and actually more than the marathon 2012 against Djokovic, I remember the 17-1 against Federer. I mean, that year, 2017, was just crazy that, at the start of the year, 2 grand old men of tennis who had both missed a chunk of the previous season, injured, didn't play half the year, and start 2017. I don't think both were in the top 10 seedings also, that if I remember correctly, and end up meeting the final. I mean, in the whole Federal rivalry, I think the 2017 Australian Open final would be one of the craziest ones, just for the sheer context of when it happened. And either man could have won it. Federer, I remember Federer crying after one Australian Open where he said, God, it's killing me and all that But after that Australian Open final, he said, if I could share a trophy, this would be the trophy that I would share. Both of them. So that is one of those great Nadal comeback stories. There have been so many Nadal comebacks. Actually, this has been a carrier of comebacks, given the number of injuries that he had. I remember one of the, maybe after his 22nd Grand Slam title, there was a graphic where, Nadal is playing and then there are arrows pointing at different parts of the body where he's been injured during his career and there's not much left, right? So for someone who's gone through so much, that 2017, even the 2017 season was a great one for both Federer and Nadal. Then they split the 4 slams that year. So yeah, that's one of those crazy comeback stories in a career filled with those comeback stories. Mihir, your favorite Nadal moment?
No, I mean, I just wanted to kind of, add to what you were saying about him and Federer crying. I think crying also has gone out of fashion now. At least the way Nadal and Federer used to so openly after one of so many of their bruising encounters. But, like you guys are talking about the matches and moments and everything. I've not been like a very avid tennis watcher. So I've been from Grand Slam to Grand Slam kind of a person. But one thing that's always kind of struck me the most and, I think was that both Federer and Nadal, like they literally took the game beyond just the tennis, right? So it was in a way the Messi Ronaldo equivalent of tennis. And I've always seen Federer to be this Messi equivalent where everything came to him so naturally and God gifted and effortlessly. I mean, that's also kind of unfair to say because of course, he's worked so hard. So to say that it's effortless, but he made it look so effortless, whatever he did. And Nadal has been like Ronaldo, where he didn't always look naturally gifted with the strokes and everything, but he just, with a lot of perseverance, made it happen. Like just a lot of hard work. And, there's this always someone on Twitter would say that as long as Nadal is on court, there is hope. And that stayed true for so many years. And I mean, that era was about Messi and Ronaldo and also about Federer and Nadal. And those two traits, right, in both those characters, that really struck to me the most. And fighting back the injuries. Rohit Brijnath, a writer I really admire and follow closely, he, in some of his recent articles used to repeatedly mention that are Nadal's body parts now running out of warranty period. And, it looks like finally they have. But yeah, I mean, just the emotions that both these players evoked was tremendous. But clearly, Vinayak, you were the Federer guy. Namit, were you the Nadal person, Federer, or someone totally different?
I was a Nadal guy, yeah. I mean, now that I work in this, I feel like I'm quite jaded. I'm not feeling as emotional as you guys are feeling for some reason. But yeah, growing up, I was a big Nadal fan. That's why I have long hair, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But I think the things that you guys touched on are actually a lot about why, Nadal has so much of this deep affection for him. Obviously, is that Federer-Nadal rivalry is a separate thing. We should talk about that separately because of what it did for tennis was unlike anything before, because tennis is it's a sport that thrives on rivalries, right? Like you had Evert Navratilova and Sampras Agassi or Borg McEnroe or whatever in the olden times. But I think the massive thing that Nadal evokes in people is the connect that he gets by fighting. And I know that sounds like such a cliche, but I've seen this to be very true about the reason why there's such a reaction to his retirement, because a lot of people feel like had he not gotten so many injuries, especially late into his career, he would have continued. And I think that the reason for that is that he kind of changed the way people perceive tennis players to be. Maybe either they would be in the mold of Federer or somebody like that who just kind of floated above everybody else. And, when they were great, which is what 99% of the time Federer was during his peak, he was untouchable. But at that 1%, maybe he didn't, he was not fully present and then he would lose. And he had a tendency sometimes to choke and give away leads and, not always be at 100%, but that the value of Nadal to tennis was more or less that he changed that perception and he became a player who kind of fought for everything all the time. And every point was like his last, like you were saying earlier. And I think that has a massive connect to people that maybe we underestimate because we try to analyze forehands and backhands and serves.
No, as in, like, obviously, I think the fans connect to emotions more than, like stats and all these technical aspects are few fans, obviously. It's not to generalize all fans, but generally you become a fan because you have emotional attachment to something. That's how you become a fan of anything in sport. We touched upon the rivalries. I actually wanted to, obviously when we discuss Nadal, we discuss Federer, but on court, the Nadal-Djokovic rivalry is actually the goated rivalry, so to speak, right? Just a little bit on that. They played last match was the 60th, right? That's crazy, right? To think they played 60 times against each other and so many of them epic contests. In Federer-Nadal rivalry, there is a lot of emotion attached to it, but there were a few one-sided matches and, sometimes Federer didn't really compete on clay, at least in the early days. He had some easy matches on hard and grass. But the Nadal-Djokovic rivalry is crazy, right? Especially thinking of that Australian Open 2012 final where they needed chairs in the post-match interview. They had to sit down after the near 6 hour. So that rivalry is, even Djokovic had really nice things to say on Twitter last night. And Djokovic always has nice things to say about his rivals. He's one of the things that he's really good at apart from tennis. He has the right words most of the time. So that is probably the rivalry of Nadal. Says Federer is his greatest rival, but on-court rivalry is the Djokovic-Nadal rivalry is crazy, right?
So I think Nadal says that Federer is his greatest rival is because the rivalry with Federer made him a superstar, right? And I don't think that would have happened no matter how good he is if he was not playing Federer in that moment, at that time, in that era. But yeah, I think there is little doubt that Nadal-Djokovic is the best. It's the best rivalry in the open era men's tennis at least. And I think the reason for that is because the two of them kind of began having their peak at a moment when tennis was evolving past playing an all-court game, and it was going more into dominating from the baseline, right? And at that moment, you had two players who were absolutely the best at that in tennis history, at their peak, playing with each other, which is probably why they had so many of those marathon matches, right? The funny thing about marathon matches is that they're not always good. I think if you have a 5-set, like the Australian Open 2022 final that Nadal won from 2 sets down, is not necessarily the best tennis match ever, even though it's very emotional because Nadal won. But, it can get lethargic in the middle. But the thing about the Nadal-Djokovic marathons, especially early on, like the 2012 Australian Open final, there's a French Open Classic in 2013, the semi-final that they played. The reason why they are what they are is because the 5 sets and the 6 hours never feel boring. The marathon never feels, because of the kind of tennis that they are able to produce. And I think the reason the two of them are probably not known as the best is because, one, it wasn't a charismatic rivalry. It didn't feel like they're going to war. And it wasn't contrast in styles the way Federer-Nadal was. And Federer-Nadal had the luck of constantly meeting in big moments where the entire world is watching. And maybe Djokovic and Nadal didn't have that early on. But the two of them, I think there can be little doubt that they have the best rivalry. And I think that Djokovic and Federer both think Nadal is their greatest rival. So, and I think that...
But even over there, the interesting bit is ki kaisa, their rivalry, quote unquote rivalry, evolved. Because like earlier, they were just like these two guys who always met in the finals and broke each other's hearts. And then the sets of fans, thankfully, Twitter wasn't as prevalent back then. But I don't know how Twitter would have looked, especially from 2008 to 2010. And then like over the years, Vinayak, I think as, we grew older, Namit grew into his teens, perhaps, or even not that. But like I think we realized that with age, hum thoda sa mild ho jate hai. Like we just stop caring a little less about the world and everything. And I think the same thing happened even with Nadal and Federer, where with age, they also kind of mellowed down about their rivalry and then became friends. And that's when I guess even a lot of, I'm a fan of neither, so to say. But since you were clearly a Federer fan, did your transformation from being a Federer fan to a Nadal, I don't know if I can call you a Nadal fan or sympathizer or kya pata nahi was the right word, but a Nadal admirer, did it also happen because both these players also kind of came across as the best buddies and so fond of each other and everything?
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, that is how the arc played out for me exactly. And right now I consider myself a Nadal fan actually. I mean, like the last 2-3 years at least, when he's gone through these struggles, it's you kind of feel something that you felt when Federer got injured, right? I mean, it wasn't just...
You start rooting for him.
Yeah, right. Not necessarily rooting for him, but just because I know that at this point he's not going to win anything. But so, I mean, he's not going to win a Grand Slam after, 1 year out of injury and all that. So, you know that he's not going to win, but you still want him out there playing. And one of the biggest worries that I had with Nadal was his retirement was going to be on the treatment table. Like this I had felt for a longest time, that he was not going to be able to play tennis and retire because of the sheer number of injuries that he's had. And I still worry for his post-retirement career, to be really honest, given that, Federer had his troubles later on, but in the documentary he mentions that, I never thought I'd undergo a surgery in my career, ever. Federer says that. So Nadal, I worry how much he's going to be able to be healthy post-retirement. I hope everything goes all right. I was worried he was pushing himself too much just to, over these last 2 years, given what he's been going through. So, but I'm really glad that he's able to get a retirement on the court, especially playing for Spain in Davis Cup. That's a really nice touch.
I have a question. Why did he have so many injuries? Because he was playing more matches?
Two things. One, he naturally injury-prone body. And his biggest injury he had before he won any Grand Slams, it's a chronic problem in his heel, for which he needed a surgery in 2005. And that's caused him the most trouble. He looks like Achilles also. And the second thing is that his playing style was very physical, overtly physical actually, which is why he changed it during, after his third or fourth surgery. The amount that he was, especially at that stage, there was very little, even though the power baseline time had come, there was still very little play that was happening, in the sense that he was constantly battling from the baseline. And he had weaknesses in his game, very clear weaknesses that he would try to mask with his athleticism. So a combination of those things and playing so long was what pretty much broke his body down.
Yeah, I think that whole concept of looking at the revolutions per minute in tennis started with Nadal's shots from the baseline, right? The the top spins and the way he just like, and one of the craziest things that stuck in my mind, I don't remember, I think it was 2016, I guess, when Spain came to Delhi for the Davis Cup match. And I was just hanging around, like, just to watch the practice sessions. And Nadal was there. I think David Ferrer was also there. I think they were the doubles partners for that tie. And Nadal was just practicing. And boy, uska shots, yaar, like, I mean, unbelievable. The moment the ball left his racket, na, वो disc जैसा shape बन जाता था. And then you could see that it kisses the tape, and then just like lands on the other side. And it used to just like have this crazy bounce sometimes, or it used to skid off the surface. And the energy in every shot that he put, even during training, like I was tired looking at it, and so were the others. And like his training session lasted more than I think any of the matches of that Davis Cup.
So I was also there at the stadium that day. So basically on the first day of matches, so there were free passes, but you still had to physically have a pass to come in. There was a massive queue outside the stadium. Obviously, it wasn't because India were playing Davis Cup. They were not here. No offense to Ramkumar Ramanathan, they were not here to see him play. Massive queues. People were standing in lines and lines. And 1 hour before the singles match, I had gotten the notification because I was following and all that. So, I don't think people were checking their phones that frequently, but Nadal had pulled out of the singles tie because he had a stomach bug, I remember. And I wasn't in the press box. Even I had a pass. Like, I was with the media organization, but I wasn't in the press box for that. I was in the fans part of it. I had a pass and I was walking in with a few fans, and we enter the stadium and the match is about to start. The players are warming up and the guy in front of me says, "Arey, ye to Nadal nahi hai." And then he just stops short. Like, what am I here for? And then I told him, yeah, he pulled out a while back. He's not playing. And there were quite a few people entering the stadium and seeing Feliciano Lopez warming up with Ramkumar Ramanathan. They're like, what is going on here? We came to watch Nadal. Ye to kya ho raha hai? That was a funny. And he did play the doubles next day where I think it was quite packed again. But that was something that, like you got to watch Nadal live is something so surreal. Just to see him move on the court is something great. Like, I mean, at least got to see a doubles tie. So that was nice.
Yeah, I think we've covered most aspects. I mean, it's impossible to cover most aspects of his career, but we've at least covered most aspects of our emotions regarding Nadal. Any last words, Namit, Vinayak, before we call it a day?
Mir, I want to ask you, you are a big football fan as well. Is Nadal Spain's greatest ever sports person?
I mean, greatest ever wala debate mein I don't feel like going. I mean, generations compare karna I feel is pretty, like, I'll be diplomatic with that. But he did bring a lot of luck to Real Madrid whenever he was there. And he also brought a lot of luck, I guess, to the Spanish national team when they were at their peak. What a year that must have. Like, those 4 years, 2008 to 2004. If you're born in Spain and you're a sports fan in Spain during those 4 years, incredible years. Nah? You're winning in tennis, you're winning in football, your guys are doing well in F1. Pick a sport and they're all there. Like, it's also the peak when the basketballers from Spain were doing so well everywhere. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know greatest ya nahi, but yeah, I mean, I'll still say it was Iniesta, Xavi and some of those guys.
Nadal ka football equivalent kya hoga?
Ronaldo, in my opinion. I don't know what Vinayak and Namit think.
I don't want to get into trouble here, but Nadal is a nice guy. Sorry, yeah. One-liner, I think I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get into much.
Succinctly put.
Yeah. So I think that's 2008. Nadal does French Open, Wimbledon doubles, Spain win Euros. Spain national team win Euros. 2010, Nadal does French Open, Wimbledon double, Spain wins Football World Cup. 2024, Alcaraz does French Open, Wimbledon double, and Spain win the Euros. So I think in terms of passing on the baton.
Sure, but Alcaraz ka kya reactions tha? I saw those videos of him and his team watching that over a mobile phone and instant reactions. Yeah, quite as a fanboyish moment for them too.
He was in such a hurry to beat Djokovic because he wanted to watch the final.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, that video was also really nice, to see Alcaraz behaving like, the millions of fans around the world have felt over the last couple of days, him and his teams watch. A few of them in tears at the end of it. But what a really nice video as well, right? I think both Federer and Nadal nailed it together. Their retirement videos were quite fantastically done. Very classy videos. Nadal in his typical Hola a todos, the way he starts his videos, that Spanish video with English subtitles. Lovely music in the background. We were just discussing before we came on to discuss. I wasn't able to place where the music, the track was from. It was from Inception. lovely choice of music track behind, great visuals. He had included that little commentary bit where, that people talk about he plays every point like his last. And, there were great moments, playing Moya, early days of Federer, his rivalry with Djokovic. Very nicely done video. And he touched upon it. He got obviously emotional talking about his family. That was the only time I saw him get emotional during that video. So yeah, very, very classily done. And I hope he gets a nice farewell. Playing probably doubles alongside Alcaraz. I don't know if he'll play singles, but if that is the way he goes, then another nice similarity with Federer where they finished their career, Federer's career playing doubles. So if Nadal and Alcaraz finish off Nadal's career playing doubles, I think that'll be a nice.
Yeah, it'll be quite classic. But if you say, in my book, Federer's retirement whole thing was very Suraj Barjatiya movie, like very Hum Saath Saath Hai kind of a vibe where everyone was just too melodramatic and too goody-goody. Kuch zyada hi tha wo.
No, I was speaking about the video that he posted, the retirement announcement video. That was also very lame. Who knows, Nadal and Alcaraz might be crying together as well during the Davis Cup for all we know. So you don't have to rule that out. It'd be nice to see some emotions, honestly. I don't mind that.
Some emotions, yeah. But yeah, let's see. The Davis Cup match will be taking place, I guess. It's one of those things jo shayad abhi log dekhenge, varna it would have just flown under the radar. But yeah, I guess that's it for this week. काफी हमने हमारे emotions प्रकट कर लिए for Rafa Nadal. Hope it reaches Spain and they understand Hindi. But we'll be back, I think, with the next episode of Game Time next week. Probably talking Women's World Cup. Vinayak has a lot on his mind about that. So yeah, perhaps you'll see emotions over there too. So tune in for that. We'll be back next week. Thank you for listening.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.